Martial artist that is struggling with lifting weights. Maybe you don't do it at all because you hate it or you don't know what you're doing. Or maybe you do lift, but you're grinding through the same old training program. You're dealing with nagging injuries, you're hitting plateaus, and you just feel burned out. This video is going to be a game changer for you. Today, I'm going to break down the best strength training method for martial arts performance and recovery. This method is so effective and it's been used by athletes for decades, but really hardly anybody in the martial arts world talks about it. This is the exact method that we use with our clients to help them train harder, recover faster, and most importantly, stay on the mat for years without breaking down. Like Gina, she was a boxer that was struggling with multiple shoulder injuries, but she went from struggling with injuries, told she was never going to box again, to being pain-free in just about 6 months and taking her very first boxing fight in her 40s by using the principles that I'm going to teach you today. So if you're ready to stop guessing with your strength training and start using a proven system that works, let's jump in. I have my iPad here that we're going to switch to, and I'm going to break everything down for you. Okay, so I'm here inside of my iPad, and the strength training method that we use with our martial artists to help them build longevity and stay on the mats without breaking down is called the Conjugate Method. Conjugate was made popular by this guy, the late, great Louis Simmons. You're going to see my shitty handwriting all over this thing. Louis was a powerlifting coach and the founder of Westside Barbell, the gym, and Louis made Conjugate popular. The world pretty much knows Conjugate because of Louis Simmons, but Louis Simmons didn't create the Conjugate Method. It actually originates all the way back to Soviet sports training. And although most people associate conjugate training with powerlifting, it's actually the perfect training system for martial artists. And I'm going to show you why. At its core, conjugate is all about simultaneously training multiple performance qualities throughout the year rather than just focusing on one aspect at a time. If you look at traditional weightlifting, traditional strength training, maybe you spend a phase building muscle, we call this hypertrophy, then maybe you spend a phase building endurance, then maybe you spend a phase, and each phase is going to be a couple months, building strength, then a phase building power, and then what happens is by the time you get all the way to this power phase, maybe you lost a little muscle, maybe your endurance has gone down a little bit, and if you're doing a more traditional sport or you're just training for general health, this is fine. It's not a problem at all. But as martial artists, we need multiple performance qualities at the same time. And this is why conjugate is so great. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but we'll go into it in more detail. There are three major problems with a traditional strength training approach. So the first, like I talked about, is the inability to train multiple performance qualities. We won't dive too much into this because I just talked about it. But as a martial artist, you need to be strong. You need to be powerful. You need to be jacked. You need to have great endurance. And so in order to do this, you need them all year round. It's not like you just have a season where we're trying to peak for the season and then we have an off season. It doesn't work that way. It's not like football. We need all of these performance qualities year round. And this is what conjugate does really well versus a traditional strength training approach. The second issue with a traditional strength training approach is overuse injury. You take a lot of wear and tear training in your martial art. You're getting hit, you're getting taken down, you're getting submitted. There's a lot of stress going on your joints. To put more stress on those joints by doing the same movements and pounding them week after week with volume and intensity can lead to overuse injury, and conjugate helps us avoid this. And the third issue with traditional strength training is that it's boring as hell. Chances are you're not a nerd like me and love weightlifting. You love your martial art and want to train your martial art. You don't want to lift weights. You don't want to sacrifice time on the mats to lift weights because you're probably super busy with a job and kids and a family. You don't really have a lot of time to invest into your training, and so you feel like you're losing mat time if you take the time to do something you don't enjoy, like lifting weights. But there's kind of a funny paradox here because you need weightlifting to prevent injury to stay on the mat. If you neglect weightlifting, in the short term to stay on the mat and get more time in the long term, you are going to get hurt and it's going to take you off of the mat. Okay. Now, the key here is you want to enjoy the weightlifting that you're doing and you want it to be effective. You don't want it to hurt your performance or make your injuries worse. So what Conjugate allows you to do is have fun, enjoy the training that you're doing. Invest a small amount of time into strength training now so you can stay on the mat injury-free for life, okay? So like I was saying, I was talking about this the whole time, but Conjugate Method solves this with intelligent variation and loading. So variation are the exercises that we select where we are using different variations of exercises, and loading is the weight and reps and sets, how much we're actually moving. We're still going to be hitting the same movement patterns that you would in a traditional strength training program, squats, benching, rows, all of those important compound movements, but we're rotating exercise, volume, and intensity frequently so that your body can keep adapting, your mind can stay engaged, it's not boring, and we can avoid injury. Very important. Okay. So the Conjugate Method is built on 3 major training methods. These 3 training methods are how we are able to solve the issues of training one quality at a time, overuse injury, and boring training. We use these 3 methods to stay engaged, to prevent injury, and train multiple performance qualities at once. Okay. So the first is max effort work. This is heavy shit. Okay. We're going to be using compound movements. These could be your squats. These could be your benches. And we want to do anywhere from 1 to 5 reps, typically 1 to 3. And we want to move really heavy weight, 85% or more of our 1 RM. Again, I told you my handwriting is shit. There's a really important concept here called the force velocity curve. Okay, so this is the force velocity curve. On one side of the curve, we have force. On the other side of the curve, we have velocity. Force is what it sounds like, the max amount of force that you can produce. So in the case of like a 1 rep max deadlift, this is one of the most forceful activities that you can do. On the other side of the curve, we have velocity, how quickly you can move from point A to point B. An all-out sprint would be a great example of a high velocity movement. In the middle of this is where we have power. Force times velocity is how we get power, explosiveness, knockout strikes, big takedowns. In order to be successful as a martial artist, we need to hit all areas of the force velocity curve. Conjugate allows us to do this. Max effort work allows us to build the force side of the force velocity curve. Method 2 is dynamic effort work. This is our speed and power work. And if we're talking about the force velocity curve, this is where we improve the velocity side of things. And we start to dip into power a little bit as well. This is going to be moderate volume and moderate weight. So 10 to 8 sets of 2 to 3, even 1 to 3 reps is what I would say. And we want to move really, really explosive, really, really dynamically here. We're talking about Olympic movements. We're talking about jumping with weights. These could be loaded squats. We like to use, and Louis has done this, and most people that use Conjugate will use accommodated resistance, squatting or benching or moving against resistance bands or chains so we can build acceleration while we're also working on our velocity work. And then the third method that we're going to use is repeated effort work. This is, if you're thinking like a bodybuilder and you're getting pumps and you're moving a lot of reps and sets, this is what repeated effort work is. We are doing anywhere from 8, sometimes all the way up to like 50 reps, and for a good amount of sets, anywhere from like 3 to 10 sets. You got to play with the volume that works for you. We're getting pumps here. We're building resilience. We're focusing on the areas that we get injured the most in our sport. So in martial arts, it's a lot of neck, it's a lot of elbow, it's a lot of knee. So we need to build muscles like triceps and hamstrings, and we have to work on our trunk and build a lot of volume here so we can build resilience. And if you want to build muscle, we call this hypertrophy. This is where repeated effort work is going to come into play as well. All right. So the beautiful thing about the system is because we have our 3 methods: max effort, dynamic effort, and repeat effort. And the beautiful thing about it is each day emphasizes a different method. So what this means is we can work on all of our different performance qualities at the same time. We're always fresh for what we need to focus on that day. And what's really cool is because we are rotating through these different methods, it gives us enough time to recover, so it's not negatively impacting what we're doing on the mat as well, which is amazing. Okay, so how can you start implementing Conjugate in your training right now? I'm going to walk you through a really simple template. Let's say you're training 3 days a week. Day 1 could be a max effort upper body day. So you want to do some kind of warm up. You want to pick, I always like to do an explosive dynamic movement no matter which day I'm doing. So it could be something like a plyometric or a ballistic exercise like a med ball throw. And then you want to pick your primary movement. Maybe it's a bench press and you want to work up to a heavy 3RM. Then you do your secondary movement, a compound movement that complements the bench. This could be something like a Z press, and maybe we're doing 4x5. Then we want to pick our repeated effort work. This is our accessory work. This could be a couple supersets. It could be some trisets, depending on the makeup of your gym. It could just be a couple single exercises, and you want to pick some upper body movements that are specific to your sport. Tricep pumps, back pumps, core pumps, work on your neck. We're building resilience here. That's what a max effort upper body day could look like. Day 2 is your dynamic effort full body day, because a 3-day-a-week program, we're going to put both upper and lower dynamic effort into one day. So same deal. You have your warm up. We're still going to do some kind of plyometric or ballistic movement, like a med ball throw. And then your first exercise is going to be your dynamic effort lower exercise. Let's say this is a power clean. And maybe you do this for 10 sets of 2, really explosive, really powerful, really dynamic, right? We're working the velocity side of the curve. Your second exercise could maybe be something like a push press, and maybe we do this for 8 sets of 3. Same idea, really explosive, really dynamic, moving with a lot of speed and power. And then we want to go into our repeated effort work. Same kind of idea, pick low-hanging fruit, movements that are going to complement and build resilience in the areas that you might get injured in your sport, and just get some sick pumps, man. And then the third day is going to be our max effort lower day. It's going to follow the same framework as our max effort upper, but it's just going to be your lower body. So again, warm up, plyos, main movement could be a back squat. Same thing, working up to a 3RM. Cool. Secondary movement could be an RDL. Sweet. Maybe we're doing sets of 8 on that. Cool. And then our repeat effort work. Make sure that you're doing something single leg, really important. Working on a lot of hamstrings. Hamstrings are really, really important, especially if you want to prevent knee injuries. Working on glutes, getting your pumps, building resilience. Okay. One really important key to your success here to make sure that you're consistently making progress and also avoiding overuse injury is to rotate your max effort exercises every 1 to 3 weeks. And it really depends, right? Like, let's say you're doing sets of 5 on your max effort day. It's not really like true max effort, but you want to build a little bit of volume and it's still kind of heavy. If you're doing sets of 5 on back squat, you probably don't have to rotate your max effort movement, that squat, for like 3 or 4 weeks. But if you're working up to a 1 rep max, which is pretty fatiguing on your nervous system, then you probably want to rotate and exercise every single week to avoid injury. And so like maybe week 1's a back squat, maybe week 2's like a Zerker squat, and week 3 you're doing something like a sumo deadlift, you're pulling off the ground. This way you can still keep working up to a 1 rep max and producing force while also avoiding those overuse injuries. Now, we're just scratching the surface on how we implement the Conjugate Method with martial artists inside of the Fight Science operating system. This is our coaching program for martial artists. There are a lot of variables that come into play. This is just one idea. You have to take into account the martial art that you train, your experience level, the equipment you have access to, what your weaknesses are, what injuries you have, how many days a week you can actually allocate to doing strength and conditioning? What are the other stresses in your life? These are all things that we take into consideration when we create a custom performance and recovery plan for the martial artists that we work with. If you want to take a deeper dive into Conjugate, I have a free quick start guide that breaks down the methods that I talk about in this video in just a little bit more detail. You can download the link down there. And if you don't want to waste time, you know that you need help with your performance and recovery, and you're ready to take everything to the next level, you're ready to get stronger, you're ready to get more resilient, you're ready to stay on the mats for life, and you want to stop breaking down for good, then it's probably a good idea to explore what coaching with us could look like. And if that's something that you're interested in, you can apply for a strategy call with me. The link's down below. I look at every single application on that call. We'll talk about your training. We'll talk about your goals. We'll talk about your challenges. We'll identify your biggest, weakest link. If I think we can help, we can go over what options look like. If not, that's cool too. I have a ton of resources. I can probably point you in the direction of something that might work better for you. I'm very serious about what I do though, so please be serious coming to these calls. You can book that down below. And until next time, keep training hard. Leave nothing to chance, baby. Leave nothing to chance.